Good morning, readers. Well, today is the release day for Cold as Ice Cream, which is the 13th book in the Auntie Clem's Bakery series. So if you've been following that series, I'm sure you may already have pre-ordered it. If not, and are eagerly awaiting it, today's the day. If you haven't been reading in this series, then that's fine. You can read it as a standalone mystery. There's no need to have read the rest in this series. But if you do want to read the first book, Gluten-Free Murder, then that is available for free download today as well. So you can buy Cold as Ice Cream and you can pick up Gluten-Free Murder. And as usual, I thought I would do a reading today from Cold as Ice Cream. I chose not to read from the first chapter. I'm reading a little bit further in, just to give you something that will hopefully hook you into buying this book for yourself. All right. The next morning, they were gathered for a tour of the restaurant that they were going to be using for food preparation and judging. Erin kept a sharp eye out for Beryl Batcombe, but didn't see her. "I don't think she showed up," Vic said, catching Erin's searching gaze. "She must have gotten drunk on her minibar and slept in this morning. Or maybe she decided to take Erin's advice and back out of the judging." But Erin doubted it. She looked around one more time. Whatever the reason, Beryl appeared to have ducked out on the tour. Chef Kirchhoff looked at his watch, then finally shrugged. "We're one short, but we're going to need to get this tour done if we're going to stay on schedule. She'll have to catch up on the rest later." Erin heard him say something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like "Old Bat," but was probably just her name. "Let's begin, then," said the perky brunette, who seemed to be some kind of party planner. There was a whole cadre of people taking care of the logistics. Erin supposed that the rest had been hired by the contest's chief sponsor, a company that sounded like a law firm, but Erin thought it was actually one of the big food service corporations. "If everyone will follow me," the perky woman suggested. Everyone fell into place close behind her. She led them from the hotel to the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, Buttermilk Biscuits. They waited for her to tell them why buttermilk had been picked and how its ambiance and reputation would contribute to the contest. "My name is Sherry Vale," the woman introduced herself. "I know that you're all eager to get started today to get a full picture of why this contest was set up and how it's going to operate." People looked around, but no one exactly agreed with her. They were eager to get it over with, anyway. Buttermilk Biscuits is one of the oldest restaurants in the Whitewater Junction area. Built in 1939, it is a great example of some of the ethnic cuisines that helped shape the Tennessee culture. Erin could barely focus on what Sherry was saying. Who cared how long the restaurant was there or how it had influenced the cuisine? They were going to eat ice cream and drink carbonated soft drinks. That wasn't exactly haute cuisine. She looked around at the other businesses and buildings on what she assumed was Main Street. It was similar in a lot of ways to Bald Eagle Falls, small, with the colorful, narrow buildings built right up against each other, many of them with awnings to keep the brutal summer sun off of the customers on the sidewalk. It might be a little older than Bald Eagle Falls, but not by a lot. Maybe there was a little more history there, or maybe the historical buildings had just been better preserved. Vic caught her looking around at everything else and grinned, understanding her distraction. "Let's get a move on it," she said under her breath. "The woman could talk the spots off a leopard." "Maybe Beryl has the right idea. Maybe we should have stayed away this morning. It would be a lot easier to just say that we slept in or got called into Auntie Clem's." "Shh!" Someone nearby hushed them, like they were being noisy in a library. "Listen!" Erin and Vic looked at each other, both trying not to make the other laugh. It was such a ridiculous situation. They were adults, after all, not children who didn't know how to behave. They were there to get the details on the contest, not to be lectured on the local color. Erin shifted her feet back and forth. What would she make for the contest if she was one of the contestants? That got her brain going, and she was surprised when Vic tapped her arm to get her attention because everyone was going into the restaurant. Erin blew out her breath and followed the group. At last, she hoped that there was something hands-on so she didn't have to keep listening to people lecturing. They even made cooking boring, and Erin was never bored with cooking. Her hopes were dashed when Sherry stopped everyone and continued her lecture, indicating the restaurant's decor, talking about the items on the menu, both traditional and new. They could have read about any of that in the papers that they'd been given. In fact, most of what Sherry said was in the written materials, but she was intent on boring them to death by repeating every detail. Erin inched her way toward the kitchen. It wasn't like she was budging into line. She just worked her way around the edge of the group so that she would be the closest to the door when they finally got on their way to the kitchen. Sherry's voice went up and down, still perky, trying desperately to keep everyone's attention. But she'd already lost it long ago. Everyone else seemed to be just as bored as Erin, shifting their feet, wanting to get on with the tour. Okay, we'll go into the kitchen now, Sherry directed, motioning to the door Erin was standing close to. Miss Price. She happily took the lead, pushing open the swinging doors and entering the kitchen's sacred realm. She realized that they weren't going to be in there to taste everything, though they'd be allowed to check things out as the entrants were preparing dishes. There were cameras to provide top views, but sometimes there was nothing like getting close to the action. Sherry began describing the various amenities of the kitchen. Is she serious? Vic murmured. We all have eyes. We can see how it's set up. It isn't like we've never seen a commercial kitchen before. I know, Erin agreed. She didn't want Vic voicing her complaints too loudly and being overheard, or just getting shushed again. She looked around while Sherry talked, imagining how everything would look when there were multiple contestants preparing food in the kitchen. There was a large, shiny door close to Erin, which she assumed was a freezer or cold room. As Sherry told everyone about the ovens and where to find the cutlery, Erin tested the handle on the freezer. It was not locked. She pulled it harder. The mechanism made a noise that was too loud in her own ears. She didn't want everyone to turn around and ask her what she was doing. Erin turned her back to it, smiled, and waited a minute or two to make sure that everyone's attention was back on Sherry and hadn't been distracted by Erin's movements. Of course, Auntie Clem's bakery didn't have a freezer or cold room. They baked. The few frozen treats that they made were frozen in the small freezer of the kitchen fridge. It would have been great to be able to go into a cold room during the summer when the kitchen was sweltering hot, from the combination of baking, the Tennessee climate, and running back and forth looking after everything. She could just imagine being able to step into Arctic temperatures in the middle of the day to suck all of the heat right out of her. It would be heavenly. Erin gave the freezer door another twist, but found that she'd already turned it as far as she could. She gave it a tug. It didn't come at first. Erin didn't turn around to face the door, but gave it another pull. The door moved an inch. It wasn't open all the way, but she could feel the cold air starting to fall around her hand. Erin turned around and pulled the door slowly toward her. The interior of the freezer was white with frost. Erin hadn't been sure whether the temperatures would be turned down all the way past freezing, or whether they would be keeping it warmer, just a cold room for produce and food that was prone to spoilage. Definitely sub-freezing. Erin opened the door farther and looked at the shelves lining the cold room walls to see what they already had ready to go. She wasn't usually that snoopy, but she had a thing about kitchens, and she was there to look around. It was part of her job, after all. But there was something wrong. All right, I will leave it to your imagination as to what she might have found in the freezer. Feel free to pick it up today to read for yourself. Cold as ice cream. You'll notice that I've actually done a cover redesign on the entire series. We still have our little animals in the top left-hand corner, so you know it has the pets in it as well, but covers are changed a little bit. All of the covers in this series have been upgraded, and there's Cold as Ice Cream. And the next two books in the series, Changing Fortune Cookies and Hot on the Trail Mix, are both available on pre-order right now. So you can go ahead and buy them, and they will be delivered to your inbox when they go live in April and May. So goodbye. Happy reading, and I will talk to you next week.